regional from conference.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bauer. Councillor Montgomery.
I have nothing new, Your Worship.
Councillor Cox.
I have nothing, Your Worship.
Councillor Peterson.
No, Your Worship, except that we have some reports under 8.1, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Corbeil.
I have nothing, Your Worship.
And I have nothing to add. Administration.
Yes, Your Worship, we have one item under section 14.2 in camera. It's an item under FOIP section 19, confidential evaluations.
Thank you. And did you also have something under 11? I have something 11.1 street maintenance services, council policy. James Thackeray had mentioned something. Yeah, that's the
Yes,
one.
Your Worship, we'll add 11.1.
Okay, so thank you. That's 11.1. It deals with street clearing, potential councillor policy. So I'm looking for an adoption of the agenda as presented.
I'll move as amended, Your Worship.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is passed. Item number 3, presentations and recognitions. We have nothing there. Item 4, delegations. I believe we have no delegations coming forward, which brings us to item number 5, confirmation of minutes. The 5.1 minutes of the November 1st, 2017 regular council meeting.
I move that council adopt the minutes of the November 1, 2017 public hearing meeting as presented.
We're doing regular council first, regular council meeting.
Oh, my apologies. I move that council adopt the minutes of the November 1, 2017 regular council meeting as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And item 5.2, minutes of the November 1st, 2017 public hearing council meeting. Looking for a motion?
I would so move, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. You've heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is passed. Brings us to item 6, tabled items. We don't have any tabled items. And we move on to item 7. Items from administration, 7.1 WID storm agreement.
Thank you, Your Worship. Administration is recommending that Council approve signing the stormwater discharge agreement with the Western Irrigation District. Administration is bringing forward from our previous submission at the Committee of the Whole the changes that were done through our negotiations that completed on last Friday. And I have provided those to you, and I'll be going through those changes as I said previously. The WID stormwater agreement is very important to the town, and with our partner, the WID, enables us to discharge our stormwater from the original town boundaries. This new agreement will renew that agreement for another 10 years, and has been agreed to by both parties. The stormwater agreement that I brought forward, as you can look through it, were very minor. In some of them were typos, technicalities, some clarifications on a response, giving them notice. There's notice in terms of actual construction versus notice telling them we're actually going to do work in their works. Before it said 48 hours, for example. That's fine if we're going to tell them that's what the equipment's going to be in there. But if we're going to actually, they want to know 3 weeks in advance so they can schedule their crews. Very reasonable on our terms. Some cleaning up of the annual fees in terms of removing years that have already passed and are not included in this document. There is some clarifications in there about CMSI, which we'll be bringing forward in the event that that is successful. There's some ability to change this document. There's one item that was not in the document that you had, but was in the original agreement, and that's item 26, non-applicable of the Public Utility Board Act. This is just, we somehow got missed when we did the crossover from the old agreement to the new one, and this one just simply says that the irrigation district is not a public utility. Is there any questions regarding this report or the changes made?
Councillor Sobel?
Thanks, just, Mark, this wouldn't allow for or deal with any use of the town of any canal water, is that correct?
That's correct. This is for simply disposal of our stormwater.
Thank you.
Councillor Montgomery?
So I guess one of my questions has to do with section 7. It's the paragraph at the top of the page, just above section 8, where it talks about quality of what we're putting in there. Where it says that in the event that the quality of the stormwater drainage does not meet WID's stormwater guidelines, such discharge is deemed to cause the works, other irrigation works, and lands adjacent thereto irreparable harm for which damages cannot adequately compensate. That sounds pretty scary.
The WID, and I have Dave here, the manager for the WID, take water quality very serious in their canals. The canals are a private facility, and their primary purpose is for irrigation of foodstuff. So they take contamination very seriously, and they want to have some very strong language in there. We've always had that language in our agreements, and we've always managed to work with the WID to resolve any issues of water quality. It's just, I'm not concerned about that because of our strong working relationship and how we've managed to deal with it in the past, any of the issues that have arisen. Okay.
And are we normally well below kind of the threshold for quality problems?
The quality issues is, for Alberta environment, we've been spending our money in the areas of quality and getting it out of the A canal. So yes, we are well below. They have a extremely high requirement for the actual into the quality, into their actual canal network. The A Canal and A North. However, we don't have very many direct connections where it doesn't go through a stormwater facility or some treatment beforehand. And then we have some areas in our town where it actually only drains when we have a large storm and our minor system floods and we overflow and goes in to the canal. So it's running over, and that's in a very high event, like a 1 in a 100-year event that would happen. So everything's designed around a 1 in a 100-year event.
Okay. And then my other question just has to do with part 13. Where it just it has to do with the development agreement levies. Is that for like newly annexed land, or are we talking about like any? Well, I guess my question is like, if somebody gets a development permit, is that different than the development agreement that they mentioned in this contract? Like insofar as like if somebody has a pre-existing house and they do a development permit, that doesn't open them up to this levy?
No, this is basically a equivalent to an offsite levy that the WID is collecting for based on our joint use that they use to build facilities to help the stormwater. For example, one of the items that they built with this levy was the actual Eagle Lake drainage ditch. The money was collected. They used that money to build the drainage ditch that goes down to Eagle Lake. So, and it's only for the area as outlined in the map in the back. So that a new development comes in, we have in our offsite levies a per hectare basis, and we convert that and pay that levy out of this.
Okay, so like the reference in there to development agreement, that doesn't mean development permit, that's like different than?
Development agreement as in subdivision development agreement.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much.
Any other questions from council? Then I'll be looking for a motion concerning the water discharge agreement.
Your Worship, I would like
Council
to,
Bauer, sorry.
I would like to move a motion that council approve the stormwater discharge agreement between the town of Strathmore and Western Irrigation District.
And do you want the motion to include approving the mayor and CAO to sign that agreement?
And that council approves the mayor and the CAO to sign the stormwater discharge agreement.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? The motion is passed. Thank you, Mark. Which brings us to item 7.2, and thank you for all your work on this, you and your department. And on behalf of council, thank you to the WID too for working so closely with us and Mark's department to have this agreement and bring us some stability for the next 10 years. So thank you. Item 7.2, Cooperative Stormwater Management Initiative Agreement.
Thank you, Your Worship.
You're close.
Just about got that one.
Just about did it.
Yeah. Administration is bringing forward a request to approve the CMSI agreement that was brought forth in the previous session with council. In that previous session, sorry, I had to go back a little bit into the context here. The CMSI was formed many years ago to cooperate with our regional partners and the WID to come up with solutions to stormwater out and above, specifically around the town of Strathmore's annexed lands. CMSI agreement that I'm bringing forward is a framework and the overall arching agreement for us to enter into future detailed agreements related to specific development of a network to collect and dispose of our stormwater from the town's annexed area lands. In the previous meeting, council asked for some clarifications related to certain items, and I'm pleased to bring forward some clarifications. Voting structure. Voting members, who will you recommend for this, and what is the primary purpose? Each member appoints a director to the CMSI Board of Directors. Voting among directors would be established in a unanimous agreement. Examples of decisions that would require a vote include adding a new member, approving an annual capital budget, approving annual reports of stormwater master plans. See page 7 and 8 of the governance evaluation attached for the future examples. Details of the voting structure would include in the articles of incorporation. Each member will have their own process for appointing their director. However, the principle put forward in the tables outlines the directors. Based on that, we're looking at putting myself as the director, enabling them for that. The second question was asked, can we reuse stormwater in the town boundary for irrigation and volume control? Cost of stormwater, who will benefit? CMSI's response, under the Water Act, stormwater can currently be used in very limited ways. Under APA regulations today, municipalities can reuse the stormwater before it enters the CMSI system. Once the water enters the CMSI system, reuse comes under the CMSI agreement. Reuse may be one of several methods that partners use to keep their volumes contributed within their share of their system. The table the table discussed the topic. The table, they're talking about the group. Discussed the topic of reuse in details in May of 2017 for the WID's use of the water specifically, but came to the general concession that if a partner wanted to use the water within the CMSs, they would need approval from the corporation. This has been recognized as a complicating issue for CMSI that will need to be addressed, but in light of the current legislation framework, is not worth getting in too far into this discussion. So those will be brought into the detail contracts there, right? The third question about boring co-op versus the WID. The master agreement, section 4.6, provides for the ability for the co-op to borrow funds. More practically, since the WID owns most of the assets that will be used for the CMSI and can borrow against them, the CMSI corporation will have very limited borrowing capacity against it. This will lay it out clearly in the incorporation documents. So that will be in the documents that will have to be approved future. Since the last council, is there any other questions that I can answer? Or did that fully answer the questions asked previously? Mr. Mayor?
Almost stabbed my eye. Sorry, I almost stabbed my eye. In that case, council, we're looking for a motion considering the Stormwater Management Initiative Master Stormwater Agreement. Councillor Corbeil.
I move that council approve the Cooperative Stormwater Management Initiative Master Stormwater Agreement and authorize administration to sign the agreement.
You've all heard the motion. All in favor? The motion is passed. Thank you, Mark. And once again, thank you to WID and Mark and his department for all their hard work. And this brings us to our next item. And it is item 7.3, council committee appointments. Ms. Sawatsky.
Your worship, administration is recommending that council postpone this item to the next council meeting in order to allow council to review new applications that have come in for appointment to their boards.
Okay, thank you. And just for clarification, do you need that in a motion then?
Yes, your worship.
Great, thank you.
I would
Councillor
move-
Peterson.
I would move postponement of 7.3, Your Worship,
Do we need that postponed to a specific date?
Yes.
to the next council meeting, regular council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. You've all heard the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? None? So the motion is passed. And that brings us to item 8.1, reports from councillors on committees in which they sit. Pardon? Oh, sorry. Committee reports from councillors who sit on them. Councillor Peterson.
Councillor Corbeil and I sit on the Wademsa board. They had their organizational meeting. Reeve Glenkester is the chair, and Darcy Burke is the vice chair. They had their annual general meeting. Wademsa is doing a great many calls outside the normal area as a result of the AHS dispatch service now going to a closest car model. So the service to our community has not changed, but Wademsa is busier. Their call volume was 3,200 and some as of October the 31st, which is an increase of 300 calls year over year, significant. Our ambulance station needs a replacement furnace and some other stuff that is going to be done, and they did approve a quote to do that. The dispatch center is very grateful to the surrounding communities for all the cooperation during the times of the fires. They said it was the busiest time that they had ever seen in the 20 some odd years that they'd been involved. Wademsa remains in a secure financial position. And so on behalf of Councillor Corbeil and myself, I respectfully submit that report.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Are there any other reports from council members?
Yep.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Denise, Councillor Peterson and myself sit on the Wheatland Housing and Management Board. We had our meeting on Monday evening. Very, very nice board, I must admit. The budget was reviewed. The lodge has a very strong financial position. They did have a sewer main break that they had fixed. The cost was $16,000, but they ended up through insurance only having to pay $2,000. Very good for them. There continues to be waiting lists, so it is full. I think we've brought up before, or someone has, that they were looking for a bus, and they have started fundraising. They've already raised $16,300.
19,100 as of today.
There you go, 19,000 as of today. They have a bake sale coming up. They have a bunch of other letters that have gone out from major sponsors, but they're very, very excited. We also had a letter from the Hospice Society, and we have invited them to come to our next meeting so we can discuss partnerships, which is very good. And how do you say it?
ASHA. Yeah,
ASHA.
yeah.
The ASHA convention is in April in Red Deer. And other than that, again, very nice board.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Are there any other reports from councillors?
I'd just add to that there's a 2.5 increase on the municipal
sorry.
equalized assessment. That's the only.
Sorry.
Mel will be interested to hear that.
Thank you. Ms. Sawatsky, am I looking for a motion to accept those reports? Okay, thank you. Council, I'm looking for a motion to accept the committee reports.
So move, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is passed. Brings us to item 9, items directly related to council. I don't think we have anything there. Nothing under 10, bylaws. And 11.1, urgent business, I think it's council policies, street maintenance services. Mr. Thackeray?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to ask our director to come forward. And does everybody have copies? No? We'll pass out. Found it?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Thackeray. And Mark, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Over the past 2 weeks, town has experienced higher than usual snow events accumulation. Town crews have been working very hard these past days plowing and removing snows. Many valid and important concerns have been raised, which illustrates gaps in our service model as well as communication, our webpage going down, social media, etc. From these recent snow events, we hear the important concerns and take them very, very serious. Currently, the town operates a snow management program to provide standards for control of ice and snow and streets under 3 key policy documents. The Winter Street Maintenance Policy, 3201, adopted in 2001, the Traffic Bylaw, 0618, and Community Standards Bylaw, 1305. These documents together make up the framework under which the town's service delivery models operate. The key trigger to achieving these programs is is section 5.1, basically the 3 centimeters standard of the policy 3201. Further and important, the policy directs the director, operations manager, and CEO to review and recommend to the CEO and ultimately to council any policy changes and amendments. It is my professional view that there are a number of changes to the policies necessary to provide a more responsive service delivery model and communication plan for sustainable snow management operation. In the interim, we have initiated a number of changes to make improvements. These include internal communications with changes in protocols between our departments, additional contract resources, VOCR, SPR, split shift for longer storm durations. We end up currently, the last few storms, we put everyone on it starting at 5 and let them all run, and yet the storm lasted for 3 days. And so we only had 12 hours before our guys timed out, or 14 hours they time out. So now we're going to split that when we know that the storms can be for many days. Extra weekend coverage for employees. We're not just covering for our just our on-call during the weekend. When we know there's snow, we'll be having additional staff on during the weekend. Downtown cleaning at bump outs and islands. We're taking on the cleaning of the bump out portions as park space. We're recommending that council make a priority to review the program policies and direct administration to review and update the Winter Street Maintenance Service Delivery Model, and further that council review proposed draft policy changes at the Committee of the Whole meeting in December 13th, 2017. Respectfully, Mark.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council or comments? Councillor Sobel?
Well, with due respect, I guess this is this is where I'm coming from. I take a little bit of exception in the statement that we've had higher than usual snow event accumulations in the last 2 weeks. We've had 2 storms. There was some snow, but we've had a lot more snow in the past years than we had in, I mean, let's bear in mind that this is November, so, this wasn't 4 feet of snow. Total, we probably got 10 inches. In the last 2 days, maybe 2 or 3 days, no matter where I went in this community, I saw plows out. Roads are getting cleaned, and in spite of the fact that there's so many problems with our policy, something has changed in the last 3 days. So I'm not quite sure yet what that is, but I know that before that, I couldn't find a plow, and I looked. So I appreciate your comments, but I think there was something that was not being understood about how to clean snow. At any rate, I think it's rectified, because, as I said, in the last 3 days, it's just absolutely night and day. All of a sudden, there's signs up, there's roads being cleared, there's snow being removed. It's back to what it was. So whatever and whoever did it, I appreciate that. But the focus on this is a review of our policies. And when I look at what we've done in the last 3 days, I don't know that is a priority. I think it has to be done, but I don't think that's what's needed to get our snow removed again, because it's evident that our staff can do that, and they have been doing it in the last 3 days. So I guess that's my comment.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Are there any other comments or questions? I have one just for Mr. Thackeray, and, actually, sorry, Councillor Cox, we'll come back to you then. Did you have a question?
Yeah. So was there any changes in the last 3 days? I guess my question is did something change, or are they just playing catch up? They've finally caught up.
They're catching up. We did have we have quite a few staff sick, and we've added some more staff to compensate for that in the last few days, which has helped out the crew to address some of these issues, so we have more of that. But I do believe we're doing our policy like Mr. Sobel was saying, that but we are just catching up. It was, although it was only 2 storm events, talking to Voker, they spent almost 4 times the amount of plow hours this year than they did last year. So it is not the same as last year. But, so it's been a tough season because of the rain, the freezing rain. It was different snow. So I think we are catching up. But
Thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick question to Mr. Thackeray, our CAO. Would you, just for the public, explain the 12-hour, I think you mentioned that it was a provincial thing, a guideline or a law as far as our crews working? Maybe that would be a good thing to explain.
Are you referring to Alberta Employment Standards?
Yes, that's the
it's
one.
Alberta Employment Standards. It has a maximum, and it's 12 hours.
And that's that our crews can be out?
That's, yes, unless you have specific written permission.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you've all heard Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate the report, and I really appreciate the initiative that we see in front of us. And I really also think that one of the best things to come out of this, for my understanding, is that there is a huge necessity for a greater corporate understanding, a corporate communication understanding from this perspective. And when I was looking at the snowfall and heard the global news weatherman say that this was the highest snowfall ever recorded in any November, I think was what he said 2 days ago at this time of year. So I think that respectfully it is very, very different. And maybe it's because I grew up in the back of beyond, where the community had to buy their own snowplows. And because I've been in Chestermere, Airdrie, Brooks, and Calgary in the last week, we still look better than all of those places. And I live on a priority route, and the plows hadn't got there because they were on other routes, and I did see plows. The worst thing I saw was high school students with bald tires on their vehicles trying to push each other out of the drifts in the parking lot. I didn't see it as the traumatic experience that was reflected to me through the screenshots I received from social media. I just didn't see it, and I think that there was a compilation of people confirming their frustration, but I don't think that necessarily means that what we do is wrong or an error. I do think the impact to council is our ability to build a cohesive team network. And I would like to communicate to the staff in this community, in our community, the staff that works for the town, that in spite of being short workers and having people out on leave, that they have risen to the task, and I'm really grateful. And I think that it is incumbent on this council to work with our staff to build a stronger corporate structure. And I look forward to having a deeper conversation in some future time around that.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say I can see that you guys take this very seriously, and I appreciate that you guys are taking steps. And I am confident that we will come up with a kind of a strategy to properly deal with this so that we can keep our people happy. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Sobel?
Thank you. You know, there was a comment just made a few moments ago in regards to the fact that we had staff down, and I think that's very important. And I wish we had started this memorandum with those comments, because I think that was one of the big issues that we had in this, that we not only had some staff members down, but we had some very, very key staff members down. Basically, our number one and number two individuals in this category. So, And I guess I was voicing some disappointment that that's not how we started. I think we have to be, very clear and very honest with our constituents. We made a mistake. And apparently I might be the only one who thinks that we didn't provide the service that we could have in the first few days. And I know there was a lot of angry people. I heard a lot of angry people, and I know a lot of people phone this town office with complaints, and I know that some of our staff had to listen to some pretty angry individuals in regards to the roads. And we've cleaned this up, and I think people are appreciating that. But I don't think we can. I think we have to be very honest with our constituents about what happened. And this was a manpower. I've called this the perfect storm. We've had snowstorms pretty close together, and we've had a lack of manpower and a lack of preparation and key individuals, and I think that's very important. We've turned this around, and I think Public Works and your department should be very proud of the work they're doing now. So I guess the whole point I was trying to make is that we have to be very, very open with people. We can't. To blame this on snow events, I don't think it's fair.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Cox.
I just wanted to ask then, in that, further to what Bob said, are we going to put out a public service announcement? It's already out? And again, I do think that you've done a good job.
And I won't take the credit. I really want to. My operations staff have really stepped up, and although we were short-staffed and we had some senior people gone, we had our next senior people really did an amazing job. And was there some foibles, some little errors here and there? Yes. And have they identified? Yes. And will they do better next time? Absolutely. But I think this goes to the policy issue that we really want to get to.
Councillor Bauer.
I would like to, thank you, Your Worship. I would like to just say that it's really not about your mistakes, it's how you recover from your mistakes. And in this instance, if we use this as a learning opportunity, which it is, we can see that, yes, we did have that perfect storm. We did have people out, which is a very sensitive issue. It's not easy to talk about when people are away and when they're not fulfilling their full-time obligations, especially when the town doesn't know when they're coming back and if we should hire somebody in there to replace them under these circumstances. And I really appreciate the town coming forward and saying that additional contract resources will be will come to play from Volker Steven, Gray, and SPR in the future, and that they have split shifts for longer storm durations and the extra weekend coverage by employees. The downtown clearing of the bump outs, I heard specifically from business owners in the downtown area who came to me and asked me about that. You've identified it, you've said that the town would pick up that, and I'm very appreciative. And I think that this is really something to be thankful for. I think that the combination of feedback on social media definitely did spur this into action, but I think the council, or I think that the town was already going in that regard. And so I would like to commend you on your work and say thank you to the people that are on the streets and that are doing this, because we really appreciate what they're doing.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? The only thing I would add is that I also appreciate the speed at which you and your staff reacted when things started to really come to the fore. The other thing is, I've done it on my own Facebook page, and I think that we're doing it tonight as well. We're owning the fact that there were some problems. We've already made some changes to react to the problems, and I think anytime you apologize for something, you have to also make changes, and we've already done that. We've got new staff, and we've gone after the problem areas, so I appreciate that. And I think Mr. Thackeray is bringing, our administration is bringing forward this idea to look at the policies in general to see if that overarching framework can also help us as we move forward. So I guess we're looking for a motion. It's at the bottom of your first page there. Right at the bottom of the memorandum. Councillor Peterson?
Your worship, I would move that council make a priority to review the program policies and direct administration to review and update the Winter Street Maintenance Service Delivery Model. And further, the council review proposed draft policy changes at the Committee of the Whole meeting December 13th, 2017.
You've all heard the motion. Is there any discussion or comments on that?
I have a question.
Councillor Peterson?
So will there also be a communication guidelines for council with regards to such events in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? The motion is carried. And that brings us to item 12, questions between councillors and councillor statements, 12.1. And I believe it's Councillor Bauer. Are you presenting something on the Innovation Forum report?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, myself, Councillor Sobel, Councillor Montgomery, and then Ryan and Hetty all attended the Wheatland and Region Innovation Forum on November 9th, last Thursday. It was a full-day event at the Civic Centre. The focus was Rural Prosperity Initiative, and the Rural Prosperity Initiative is managed by the Sustainability Resources as a multi-year program designed to first identify and then support the implementation of sustainable solutions for rural municipalities. So they identified different areas of reducing environmental impacts, water, waste, and energy, and we were able to have speakers from Ducks Unlimited Canada, the Western Hub Manager of Alternative Land Use Services, Mike Dorian, the owner of Living Soil Solutions. We had Steve Price, the president of the Expander Rocky Mountain GTL Inc., which was a building, a small-scale modular building. Some of you might be familiar with the Sprung buildings. As well, we also had an officer from Lakeland College speak on farm energy management. And so many other really good presenters speaking on innovation in our Wheatland district and opportunities for us to go forward in our region and use sustainability to enhance our economic and community development. So what I would like to do is I'd like to present this to council and just make it available to them. Should you like to take a look at what we were able to learn, I would love to give more information, and I would just like to submit this as my report.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Are there any questions for Councillor Bauer or comments? I'm going to turn to Ms. Sawatsky again. Do we need a motion to accept this? No, thank you. Okay, thank you. That brings us to item number 13, administrative inquiries. Are there any that have come forward? No, thank you. And then I'll be looking for a motion to go in camera. Concerning items concerning FOIP sections 24 and section 19.
So move, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. We have a motion to go into in camera. All in favor? Motion is carried, and we are going into in camera at 7:43 p.m. Thank you.